Ambassador, thank you for being with us here today at Ukrinform.
Thank you for having me.
During a recent meeting in Brussels with the Belgian Prime Minister, President Zelensky told him of the preparation of a European plan of achieving a just and lasting peace. And he invited him to participate in the work to this end. Is Belgium ready to join this process, and in what capacity?
I think that was a very good meeting that took place in Brussels between our Prime Minister and your President, and it was the first offline meeting they had since the installation of the new government in Belgium. They had already had a telephone call, but now they met in person. For our Prime Minister, it was the opportunity to confirm the support of the new Belgian government for Ukraine, to strengthen Ukraine's position at the negotiating table and in achieving a just and lasting peace, with the understanding, of course, that a just peace with solid security guarantees is the only ultimately sustainable peace. Belgium is certainly willing, as our Prime Minister stated, to join the process, this peace process, alongside European partners. Belgium will have to do some homework as well in terms of beefing up its defense expenditure. But it is certainly something that the government is now concentrating on. We have to drastically speed up defense expenditure in Belgium. It is all about the objective of the 2% of GDP. When it comes about boots on the ground, about the military contingent and so on, as our Prime Minister stated before the media, that is certainly something Belgium would look at from a positive point of view, but there is a note of caution at this stage. I mean, this type of action would then, of course, presuppose that indeed we have a solid and a fair peace agreement, that there is a solid mandate as well, and that the circumstances are such that such a presence on the ground would indeed serve its purpose.
Do you have a feeling maybe that the very fact that the US has changed its approach to the whole situation of the war of Russia against Ukraine and to the issue of protection of Europe against external threats, that created an unprecedented incentive for the European Union to review its own security and defense policy?
You're right in your analysis that signals that came out from the White House lately have really sort of galvanized a European stance on the challenges and threats and how to tackle them. I would not say that we start from scratch here. I mean, there is already a lot of reflection, study work, and political discussion has already taken place and to see how Europe can acquire more autonomy in its own defense capabilities and deterrence. But as you say, this what we have been witnessing in the last weeks has certainly been a wake-up call. Now, for me, a key moment is the Special European Council that was convened in Brussels on the 6th of March. And I think we can say that European leaders there have really shown a lot of unity, a lot of sense of purpose, and a lot of focus on exactly that, how to make Europe more autonomous, more independent in terms of providing for its own security, also how to make reflect on what we have to do more in order also for us to keep supporting Ukraine. But that was a very strong moment, I think, with an overall or very large amount of consensus, and that is certainly something that leaders will work further on, that has to be further concretized also in various ministerial councils and so on. But we have a compass, we have, let's say, a roadmap, we have made also, we have a clear view on how we can finance all this. So Europe has certainly shown that we are ready.
We all heard the unfortunate news that the F-16s pledged by Belgium cannot be delivered as planned due to objective circumstances, including that the F-35s from the United States have not been delivered to Belgium yet. So the Belgian airspace will not be safe without the certain number of warplanes in the fleet. Do you see any ways to influence the situation, to change the realities that we're now seeing with this delivery?
First of all, Belgium stands by its pledge to provide 30 F-16s to Ukraine. That is part of the bilateral security agreement that has been signed with Ukraine. But Belgium is part of this coalition, and there is a division of work, a division of labor in this coalition. And those that were already in a position to provide the planes, they have done so. What is the crucial role at the moment of Belgium in the coalition? That is to participate in the training of Ukrainian pilots. And for that, we already make available F-16s for training purposes to Ukrainian pilots and ground crews. We also provide spare parts, and indeed the maintenance of the planes is something that is sort of Belgium, that is what is Belgium is actually, and very concretely and very substantially contributing to now. So what is important to understand is that in order to keep your planes operational, the combat-ready planes that have been delivered to Ukraine have to stay combat-ready, have to stay operational, and for that you need trained pilots, trained ground crew, spare parts, and maintenance. And that crucial part of the program is being looked after by Belgium. And the planes, they will follow. Our Prime Minister has explained that already this year we will be able to provide F-16s for spare parts, and then there is good hope that we can deliver combat-ready planes in 2026. We should know also that the original target year in the bilateral security agreement was 2028. So we are well ahead of that schedule.
We know that Belgium holds the largest amount of frozen assets of the aggressor state, and we heard that dozens of lawmakers addressed King Philippe of Belgium with the call to publicly support the seizure of 250 billion worth of frozen Russian assets in support of Ukraine. To what extent does the idea find support in Belgian public and in Belgian government?
Mm-hmm. Also, here some clarification is interesting to give, and I will not bore you with the distinction to be made between frozen assets and immobilized assets, but it is a very important distinction, Because the bulk of the assets in Belgium are precisely immobilized assets, and that means that they concern transactions that have been halted, that have been immobilized, that involve the Russian National Bank. This is a different legal basis to immobilize them than freezing private assets. Now, the bulk of the money is about these immobilized assets. It would not be right to say that they are just sitting there idle. No, they are producing money. By the fact that these assets are immobilized, they generate money, they generate interest, there are also bonds that become cash money. On that cash money, interest is being generated, and that interest is already being used in order to allow for Ukraine to repay loans that have been granted by the G7. And these loans serve exactly the purpose that we speak about, and that is about helping Ukraine to sustain its economy and to sustain its war effort. So by confiscating this money, we would actually kill the goose with the golden eggs. We would take away a sustainable source of a constant flow of money to the benefit of Ukraine. So when we have to choose between confiscation now and keeping a source of a constant flow of money to Ukraine, then and it is not only Belgium that is reasoning in this way, also other countries that hold important amounts of assets are following us in that reasoning. It would be wrong to give away this source of money, and also this money is absolutely important to keep as a leverage in peace negotiations when it is about Russia repaying or repairing the damage that it has inflicted upon Ukraine. At the same time, confiscation could entail important risks in terms of financial stability, legal risks, and so on. And then Belgium and other EU countries that would follow in the same path would be disproportionately hit by all sorts of litigation and so on. But it is not a clear-cut.
So you milk the cow, you don't slay it.
Exactly.
In an interview with our agency more than 6 years ago during your first term as ambassador here, you said, and that's when the war was already going on at its initial stage. You advised that Ukraine not focus on just one tool, which is sanctions. You said they're not the only instrument that help the international community uphold the legal order. From today's perspective, do you still believe this is the case? And maybe what tools, other tools of influence on the aggressor state, do you consider effective and efficient? I'm
still of the same opinion. Sanctions are absolutely important. Of course, also given the gravity of the aggression inflicted on Ukraine now by the full-scale invasion, sanctions have taken up an even more important role. We are already at a 16th package of sanctions that are much more comprehensive than they were, let's say, 8 years ago. They are much broader in their scope in terms of individuals and entities that are being targeted, are much more comprehensive in terms of sectors that fall under sanctions, in terms of import and export restrictions. So they play their role, they play an important role, and they bite, they work, but they have to be constantly reviewed. We have to adjust to evasion, circumvention of sanctions and so on, and that is a whole machinery at work. At the same time, I'm still convinced, and even more than ever, that there are also other ways to pressure. For example, in the past weeks, we didn't hear a lot about accountability. We didn't hear a lot about impunity. We didn't hear a lot about war crimes being committed. We didn't hear a lot about how to repair the enormous damage that has been and devastation that has been inflicted on Ukraine. So also there we are working, I mean we, Belgium together with European and other partners of Ukraine together with Ukraine, we are working further on bringing in place this special tribunal that will judge cases of crime of aggression, and we also continue our work on this register of damages. So the whole aspect, the whole dimension of accountability and let's say, not rewarding the aggressor. The aggressor should not feel, let's say, feel free in doing what he is doing. So the dissuasive effect that comes out of this type of international legal instruments is still and all the more important.
Well, yeah, actually, while maintaining that pressure, economic pressure on Russia, it's really critical for Ukraine to see how many international businesses, let's say businesses, they retain their presence in Ukraine, thus contributing to the development of our economy, paying taxes, investing, keeping the economy afloat, besides the obvious microfinancial assistance from international partners. Maybe you have a story or two of Belgian businesses that remained in Ukraine despite the big war that started in 2022.
Soon after my return to Ukraine in August, I have been reconnecting with the Belgian business community in Ukraine, and I've also convened them to a gathering so that they also could reconnect among themselves, and precisely because I wanted to learn from their experiences. I wanted to know what they went through. I collected a lot of interesting stories. I mean, I hear about companies that indeed had a very hard time. I mean, their plant or their facilities there have been destroyed. I hear from others that are still operating very close to the front line. But they show indeed remarkable tenacity and resilience, while also putting safety first for their workforce and their staff. I hear about companies not active in the defense industry that saw their productivity and their productivity grow and their turnover double. So they contribute, as you said, indeed, to economic life in Ukraine. They pay their taxes. I heard that the other day from the head of the tax administration that is a very high degree, an exemplary degree of tax compliance among Belgian companies. And I see an important role for these companies, given the sectors in which they are active. I mean, this is construction, this is farming, this is building materials, this is state-of-the-art IT technologies. I see an important role for them in the reconstruction and recovery of Ukraine. Belgium has an important defense industry still, and that representatives and leading companies, the flagships of our Belgian defense industry, are coming to Ukraine, are making contact with their counterparts, and are already, in some instances, are already in well-advanced state of preparing co-production agreements. There is even talk about joint ventures, also with a longer time horizon. than the war. So there is a dynamic at work, and as an ambassador I can only applaud this, and I will certainly encourage this. That already Ukrainian defense industry has shown also remarkable tenacity and resilience, is still being underused, is also, I mean, developing state-of-the-art, cutting-edge new technologies, and is really manifesting itself as a valuable partner for us. We have as much to learn from Ukraine as we can share with Ukraine.
Can you tell us more about Belgium's efforts and plans and intentions toward Ukraine's reconstruction and recovery?
Belgium is already present and active now. We have a running 4-year program of 150 million euros as our contribution to Ukraine's reconstruction and recovery. The geographical focus of this program is on the Kyiv and Chernihiv region. The sectoral focus is on health and social protection on the one hand, education and skills, vocational training, for example, on the other hand, and as a sort of an overarching objective in building back better, but also building back greener in terms of energy efficiency. This program is being implemented by the Enable, or implementing agency. They have boots on the ground since the summer of last year. And the first tenders have already been published. The works have started on building shelters, on providing generators in the framework of decentralized energy generation. Fora are being organized on vocational training. Contacts are being made with the various interlocutors and stakeholders. So that is also a well-oiled machine that is already rolling, and that is, in my view, because I visited, for example, Chernihiv to see for myself how this is going, and I think this is a fantastic tool for both our countries to build this country back better together.
Yeah, by the way, I saw the report that you came to Chernihiv, including to become a donor. You donated blood in Chernihiv hospital, along with Mr. Deprez, the resident representative of Enable in Ukraine.
It's a modest gesture compared to the tremendous amount of solidarity and concrete support that is being shown by Belgians towards Ukraine. We have numerous convoys, humanitarian convoys that are not organized by the government, but that are organized by the citizens, that are the result of citizen initiatives, and that are very concrete examples of this heartfelt solidarity between people. It is about delivery of medical equipment, delivery of medicines, delivery of ambulances, of four-wheel drive trucks. But I also, another development I see happen is the number of twinnings between cities and municipalities. So this very concrete cooperation between local governments that are very close to the people, and that also are directly contacted by the citizens to say, hey, do we also do something? And then you see a growing interest in linking up Belgian companies between Belgian municipalities or cities with their Ukrainian counterparts. So the support, the solidarity, the empathy between both countries finds its way through various channels, and what civic organizations are doing here, what civil society is doing here is just tremendous.
I assume that in the Belgian media space, the issue of the war in Ukraine, the disposition of what's actually going on in Ukraine is still quite high. Yeah, people understand the developments, and they are aware. But still, I do understand, as probably across the entire European continent, Russian disinformation, manipulation, misinformation, whatever you name it, it's present. How do you assess the current situation of disinformation in your country, and the ways it can, should, or is already being tackled?
Yeah, I think the problem with disinformation is not only that there is a constant flow of disinformation, and that needs to be tackled on the spot, that needs to be debunked, and but that requires a lot of alertness, and also that requires a very sound counter narrative. Where is the biggest danger, in my view, that is that the disinformation that has already indoctrinated our minds over 3 decennia long, is very hard to undo. So we have been undergoing a barrage of disinformation already for decades, without us really noticing, and like sort of absorbing a Russian narrative without really realizing whether this was disinformation and whether this was all very, and whether this was the true representation of facts. The way in which let's say, the history of Ukraine is not much known to the average Belgian, and even I learn every day about new facts of Ukrainian history. But when you compare that to the constant flow of a Russian-centered narrative on the history, the older history, and also the recent history of this part of Europe, that has really created a lot of damage in our minds, and this is the hardest to undo. We should really make the effort to dig a little bit deeper in what type of information is being sort of spread to us, and we should diversify our sources as well. We should compare sources. We should stick to reliable sources. So, but that demands a degree of mental alertness that is a very healthy thing in these times, and I do hope also that this is something that is really taught in schools and so on, that the new generation is taught to think critically, that we should not limit ourselves to our bubbles. We should really have an open and a critical mind.
From Ukraine, seeing many parallels between what is happening now in Ukraine, around the war, around the alliances in Europe and beyond, and what happened during major crises of the 20th century, the 2 world wars. And I believe everyone in Belgium is aware of the terrible consequences of both conflicts for the nation. What reflections do you have knowing the history of your country, knowing the history, especially World War I period, and what we're seeing in Ukraine, maybe the consequences and the repercussions of what's going on may be around the same as it was for Belgium. How long did it take for the country to recover? That's the first question. And what experiences, what lessons can we take from Belgium to us? What can we impose on ourselves to get out of the situation stronger?
Yeah. It's interesting that you make that parallel because, and especially with World War I, because it is very often on my mind as well when I look at what is happening in Ukraine and what is happening to Ukraine. And indeed, World War I was, and especially in the west of Belgium, the only slice of country that was still free, but was like one battlefield, as we see now, with trenches and so on, as we see now on the front line in Ukraine. I mean, this was such a devastating war that indeed it took more than a decade to rebuild the region. And I also read that it was only by the 30s that we reached the pre-war level of population in the region, but the whole construction of housing, of factories, of buildings, administrative building. I mean, Ypres was completely flattened. A lesson learned from that war is that until today, we are still finding unexploded ordnance in this part of Belgium. I read that yearly 150 metric tons of unexploded ordnance are still found excavated in that part of Belgium, and that is all sorts of ordnance. That is also the chemical
Agents,
shells,
yes.
chemical agents. So that explains why Belgium is a proponent of all the international legal instruments that have been brought to life in the past decades on banning chemical weapons, on banning anti-personnel mines, cluster bombs, and so on. This is like the collective memory to this tragedy makes us taking that stance in the international fora. So that is an important lesson that we take, and that is an interesting point of comparison with what is happening now in Ukraine, because at the moment I'm told that Ukraine is the most heavily mined country in the world. And this is an absolute tragedy, because this is already a reality of the war, but this is also a reality and a constant threat that will follow you for years after the war in demining the country, in decontaminating the country, and it is a real obstacle to reconstruction and recovery. So it is really a point of attention for the international community. We have to be aware of that. Another interesting parallel, and there I would love to be a teacher of history nowadays in Belgium in order to explain also to the students about the futility of a neutral status. I mean, when Belgium, the independent Belgium was created was tolerated on the condition that we would be a buffer state, between the big powers of the time, and that we would be perpetually neutral. So we thought that with that neutral status, the First World War would not concern us. No, we were invaded all the same. And the situation in the Second World War was somewhat different because we had already, after the First World War, we were like Ukraine is doing now, we were also looking for solid security guarantees. But the security guarantees we got after the First World War have not been proved very helpful to save us during the Second World War. So that is another lesson how important it is to have these solid security guarantees.
Not assurances.
But what is even more important is that the lesson that we took, that we learned out of this, after these two world wars, is that there is, for our security, there is no other solution than to go the way of multilateralism, of honest cooperation between countries, ruled by basic principles as we find them in the UN Charter. For us, membership of the European Union, I mean, we are founding members of the European Union, we are founding members of NATO. That is our lifeline, that is our security. So that is like the type of message I could bring to the students in the class if I would be the history teacher, to say, well, what we see happen now in Ukraine and what Ukraine is pleading for, is advocating for, is exactly that what we did ourselves and how we experienced it ourselves, and where we saw a real and a secure path to peace, security and prosperity. And this is being part of the European family, being part of the Euro-Atlantic family, and being part of a United Nations that is based on very sensible, fundamental principles, universal principles. So that is the life lesson we learned from during and from the past century.
Well, let's hope that Ukraine will find its way, with the help of its international partners, to actually become part of the European family, to Europe, and to become part of the defensive alliance that will secure just and lasting peace for the country. Because we see now at the moment, at the heat of the moment, that it's probably the best way to ultimately secure this tranquility in the country after the crisis passes.
Yeah.
Thank you for this conversation. It's been really insightful, and we hope to talk to you again at Ukrinform.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Messenger.
Thanks.
Thank you.